Now, we say this all the time. Does he just look different? If you look at Caleb's numbers and Bo Nix's numbers, blind resume, you're like, they're kind of similar. They're erratic. They're great in the fourth. They have good offensive coaches. But if you watch them play, you're like, oh, that doesn't feel like the same player or close to it. And I think Bo Nix is really athletic. Now, I think Josh Allen 1, Caleb 2 in terms of just raw talent. Now, I think Mahomes, Lamar, although Lamar slowed last year, Herbert, there are other guys. Jalen Hurts running the football is very clever. But I just think you just trust your eyes. He can make plays. I go back to a play he made at USC.
Okay. That's ultimately what I want to talk though, because I want to talk about Caleb versus Bo Nix, because we literally just made a video discussing this on First Things First and all of that. And it was really great conversation, really great back and forth, and it was about, Caleb versus Bo, and how do we get there? What are the differences? What are the similarities? Why does Caleb get so much more praise and whatnot and Bo doesn't? And I thought it was really interesting conversation. And now I hear Colin kind of just like casually enter that conversation, so my eyes lit up. And I just did a Bears video and I was like, oh, I'm definitely making a Broncos video right now. I am definitely making that Broncos video. I want to go back and watch that video to see if you can actually see my eyes go up where I'm like, okay, note to self. But before I jump into it, Denver Broncos fans, please do not forget to subscribe and watch the full length of the video. When you guys do that, views go through the roof, subscribers go through the roof. And it's not about chasing views, it's not about chasing subscribers, it's about being able to create Denver Broncos content that people genuinely want to watch and discuss. So, we keep having the most unbiased, grounded, honest conversations about the Broncos. It makes such a huge difference to watch a full length of the video and I would really appreciate it. And this is the type of content that you'll get, right? Me finding the little nuggets. In a 3-hour conversation, he mentions Bo Nix once and I find it. And I say, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. He's on there for 3 hours, he mentions Bo Nix for 5 seconds and I go, here we go, baby. Let's do this. Let's talk about it. Honestly, it's actually one of my favorite ways to have some of these discussions and then make some of this because I do think it's something unique that I can, bring to the sports world honestly cause it's obviously not it's not the most common thing out there. So I enjoy finding those little nuggets. Yeah, I want to focus on the eye test, okay? I want to focus just on the eye test because I'm a firm believer in the eye test. I am a firm believer in that. I use stats all time. I literally have a bunch of Bo Nix videos that came out recently where I did really deep dive stats cause someone in the comment section wrongfully so was like, you never use stats. And I was like, oh, really? You want me to use stats now? Cause he was trying to tell me that Bo Nix isn't that great. And I said, okay, let's do this. And so I'm petty. So I did a whole deep dive and I went through all the stats and I was like, yeah, what do you have to say now? Is this enough stats for you? So but that's not actually how I love to do things. I actually get to heart of it and I'm an eye test. In a lot of ways I'm like, how do I feel? I watch this game, how do I feel? That's why I did the mountain, the mountain and the tears the way I do. Not only do I do it where it's only this past week, but it's really like I watch these games, how do I feel, man? I'm not going to 100% just compare third down conversion rate and completion percentage and pass rating. I'm going to look at that stuff. I'm going to still use it because numbers are important to me as well. But at the end of the day, it's like I watch this game, I'm seeing how it unfolded, I'm seeing the pressure. Okay, both quarterbacks got 15 pressures, but were they all the same? How did they feel? When did they come about? And those are all things that you really only get it from my viewpoint, watching the game in real time, especially. Not even going back and watching all 22, and it's just really like you're watching the game in real time. And Colin always says, turn the sound down. And it's like, no, turn the sound up. Feel the intensity of the moment. Feel the crowd. Feel the energy of the other players, of the coaching staff, the conversations. Feel it all. It's all part of it. It's absolutely, positively all part of it. You feel all the emotions as a fan going up and down watching a game. You feel it. You feel it. That's why we love sports. That's why. We can't get enough of it because it triggers emotional responses for us. I got news for you. It does it for the players and the coaching staff as well, okay? So, you feel it. So, it's like that's honestly, from my viewpoint, one of the most accurate ways. Now, of course, you don't always get the full view. You don't really know exactly what was available down the field or this or that. I understand that. I'm not saying it's perfection, but from just getting a baseline sense of it all, personally, it's one of my preferred ways to look at it. My second way is actually knowing the outcome of the game already, which I used to not like at all, but because the way how I make these videos and I'm just unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. And then going back and then watching that game still in real time, still, the actual broadcast footage itself. You still get a sense of the crowd and everything that's unfolding, but you know how you know what the outcome is, so you can really zoom in and be like, well, wait a second. They're up by 14 right now, 7 minutes to go in the third quarter. How does this all go wrong? What actually happens here? And then you're able to really kind of lock into some of those details. And the reality is with Bo Nix, people just do not like his eye test. That's what it really comes down to me the most. That's it, 99% of the time. Sometimes people are really obsessed. Did you win He's Super Bowl? What's your record? Did you win the division? This, that, right? People get either really obsessed with that or they just don't like what it looks like when you're playing. Even if you win the Super Bowl, even if you win a ton of games and get the conference championship games, it's what is it like? I just don't like the way it looks. It just doesn't look good. It just doesn't look like high quality. And so then you get knocked for that. So to me it's people that are either obsessed with the you either win or you lose, or it's just, that what does it look like? And to be clear, when I say I test and how I feel, it's not just like, oh, that looked pretty. It's like, no, I'm using my eye test, but I'm factoring in like everything. I'm factoring everything. I'm not just like, oh, that looks nice. And so right now Caleb, when you watch him, visually, you can see consistent marks of greatness. Definitely marks of failure. Definitely marks of inconsistencies, which apparently I was the only one comfortable enough to point that out every single week. And it was hard. Bears fans did not like it, but I did it anyway. But absolutely there's moments that you're watching where you're like, this is just amazing. This is just so spectacular to watch. And that really kind of landed it for me when I was watching AR with the Colts. And I'm like, man, this guy is not a good quarterback, but he does some things where I'm just like, this might be one of the most insane play. He had a throw against the Houston Texans, I think, like week 1 of 2024. And I was just like, was that maybe one of the most spectacular things in like all of sports? But then like the rest of the game is some of the worst football you could ever imagine. And that to me was actually one of the first times that I was like, you have to really be careful how you handle the eye test and how you handle just horsepower. The visual experience of watching and breaking down a game. Lamar Jackson at times looks like just one of the most remarkable athletes. You can't even actually imagine it. You think you could. And for some of you that have actually played sports at a high level and have been competitive, it's just like, whatever you're imagining, whatever you were able to do, even if you played in college, like even if you played at a whatever you were able to do, it's like Lamar Jackson's ability to move his body and operate in space is like times 100 compared to you, compared to me, compared to anyone. And it's just like, you just witnessed that and you're just like, this is so incredibly remarkable. Like this is just so when I look at Josh Allen, for whatever reason, the algorithm has been pumping me like random Josh Allen highlights, which, you know, I don't know why, honestly, because I'm looking at everything. And so, for whatever reason, before it was Aaron Rodgers. Before that, I forget who it was, but right now it's Josh Allen. They're like, hey. And so, I was like, okay, I'll click this. It's like middle of the night, I'm trying to wind down. And it's like you see moments when you're just like, this is absolutely insane. I would do anything to be just to know what it would be like to have that size and strength and speed and abilities for just 5 minutes. Like it's just you really do feel like you're Superman. And someone like him can't actually appreciate it. Like Josh Allen, Lamar, they can't appreciate it because they've never not been that way. So, they can't actually appreciate just how special it is. And the reason why I'm going on this whole rant is because Caleb triggers that feeling. Caleb triggers that emotional response in a way that Bo Nix simply does not. And I'd argue that Bo Nix triggers the opposite feeling, the opposite response, which is actually now, these are completely different quarterbacks, they do completely different things, they have completely different career trajectories, I'm not comparing them, I'm not saying they're equal, I'm not you don't get in in a whole heated battle with it, but like it's similar to me of like a Jalen Hurts. Where people are just like I don't like anything this guy does, no matter what he does, even his deep he's just like I just don't like it. I don't care what his stats are, I just don't like no matter what he does. You can look at spectacular, even if it's just a single game, spectacular Super Bowl highlights and people still are just like I don't like it. I just don't like it. And it's just like Bo Nix has he elicits similar responses in that regard. And it's like it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me because I think I have the ability to be able to exist in both worlds, where I can say I agree with what I just said, but still disagree with what that conclusion takes you to, right? Like I could say that on a surface level and I defended Jalen Hurts. I mean, go find someone that has more Jalen Hurts defense videos, you're not going to find them. It just doesn't exist. I'm not going to tell you that I think Jalen Hurts his game is beautiful and jumps off the screen, not at all. Not at all. Not even close. Not even close. So again, you can exist in both worlds. You absolutely positive I'd say on like a core level Dak Prescott has like a prettier game than Jalen Hurts or something. Baker Mayfield and I am not taking Baker Mayfield over Jalen Hurts. No question about it. I think that's very obvious by some of my previous videos that I've made. Very obvious. But yet like from just a strict like I'm just here for entertainment, I'm just kind of casually watching. I'm using the most casual version of the eye test imaginable. You would pick Baker over Jalen. And that's why you have to kind of know what you're looking for. That's why you have to kind of factor in everything and not just like there's really kind of two types of eye test. The true eye test, which is what I'm trying to speak to, and the surface level eye test. Like the mom test I'll give where I'm just like, my mom watches a game like she doesn't know anything about who wants to know any of these names. She doesn't know what they did in college. She doesn't know that this quarterback this coach is an amazing coach and that old line is better than that old line. She's just watching. What just looks better? What just looks smoother? What just feels, like they know what they're doing, Because my dad used to say that all the time. He goes, you look like an athlete. You carry yourself like an athlete. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's so weird. Like you just stop saying that. You're just my dad being weird. And it's like, no, like I get what he means. You see it. You just see someone that just fits the picture on the field. Now, to be very clear, I am not saying that Bo Nix does not fit that picture. Like again, I think Bo Nix is a baller. I think Bo Nix gets after it. I think Bo Nix has spectacular moments and highlights that I can point to and say, that was amazing. That's great. That's awesome. Oh man, I could only dream of what it would be like to Ave that ability to do all those things. But I'm just saying for the masses and the general felt sense, that's not how people feel. And to me, that is very very clear. And when they don't feel that way, any of your mistakes now, which Bo Nix has mistakes, like every quarterback does, those mistakes and those issues get magnified by a million, which is exactly what we see with Jalen Hurts, right? Jalen Hurts, you know, has a few issues and needs to work on things. That becomes the core of who he is as an identity. None of the other stuff matters. But then you have someone like Caleb Williams who absolutely positively also has issues. Absolutely has things that he needs to work on, which I've told you now. I've been very loud and clear about that. But it's a lot easier to overlook those things because it's like a fly to the light. We're just like, yeah, but like that throw. We still think of that Los Angeles Rams game, that throw. That was not a good game by Caleb Williams. That was not a good game by Caleb Williams. And yet we hold that game, that throw, that moment as just remarkable as one of like the most amazing moments in like playoff history. And that was not a good game. And I have videos breaking that down where I show you like the play before that, he straight up misses a throw that Collinsworth is like, you got to be able to, this is the NFL, bro. You got to be able to make that throw, especially in the playoffs. Especially going up against Los Angeles Rams in the division round. Especially when you're trying to get to the NFC Championship game. And it's like if he made that play, if he made that throw, he doesn't need that spectacular play. And it's like people forget that. People overlook that. People confuse that. And the reality is that Caleb got to operate in a smoother offense, a much smoother offense than Sean Payton. And on that video that someone replied, someone left a comment that just fundamentally completely disagree with. Why do I disagree with it? Because I was on the ground floor for both Caleb and Bo Nix. And I followed both teams incredibly closely. And so I remember exactly the conversations that were being had. Why? Because I made videos about them. Why? Because I read all the comments. And so someone said, well, the Chicago Bears were never supposed to achieve what they achieved. That's why Caleb gets more credit than Bo Nix. And it's like, no. Okay. They had Bo Nix winning like 4 or 5 games. They laughed in the faces of the Denver Broncos for drafting Bo Nix. Laughed in the faces of them, okay. So no, alright. Ben Johnson. First of all, Caleb Williams was supposed to take the Bears to the Super Bowl as a rookie, and let alone his second year. Ben Johnson was tasked with the only caveat they said is, well, we just don't know how he's going to be as a head coach. But, nobody questioned his brilliance as a coach. They were the whole question on was, well, could he do it as a head coach, and will Caleb Williams be great enough? But, otherwise, Ben Johnson was supposed to get there and transform that team. And they made changes, they increased, they improved the O-line, they drafted a monster of an offensive weapon. So they had all the pieces, all the power. Meanwhile, the Denver Broncos, Sean Payton, the head coach, is like, I'm no longer calling plays. I'm no longer good enough. When you pass off play calling to another coach, when you are Sean Payton and you are a head coach, you are literally saying, I am no longer good enough. I am no longer the man to put this team in the best position to succeed from that, from that aspect. That is what he is saying. That is not what Ben Johnson is saying right now, okay? That is not what Ben Johnson is saying, okay? The Denver Broncos were not supposed to win the division, to get the number 1 seed, to beat the Buffalo Bills, and get to the AFC Championship game, and they would have got to the Super Bowl, and so essentially get to the Super Bowl. Nobody was arguing that. That was not the general consensus at all. So, to now use that to minimize him, which is the same thing they did with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, goes, oh, the Eagles are stacked. They're supposed to be great. No, no, no. No, no, no. That is not what you said. That is not what you said. You had them not even winning the division. You had them not even making the play-offs. You had them not beating the Packers. You had them not beating the Rams, not beating the Commanders, and not beating the Chiefs. No, no, no. You can't go back on that now. You for sure new information can change your mind in very different situations. I can go in here and say, you know what? I don't think Caleb Williams or Bo Nix is that good of a quarterback. Then I watch him play throughout the course of the season and I say, well, you know what? I think Bo Nix is actually a great quarterback. I think he's a top quarterback. And they're like, wait a second, you said that he wasn't a good quarterback. Yeah, well, I changed my mind. That makes sense. Because you're changing your mind completely. The other way, you're not changing your mind, you're changing the causes and conditions. You're changing the variables. You're changing everything. Okay. And if you want to do that, then you have to admit that you were fundamentally wrong about essentially everything start to finish. Nobody ever wants to do that. Nobody ever wants to do that. So, it's like, no, no, no. Be careful how you want to play that game. So, I always say, attack the logic. Attack the logic. Attack the logic. So, yeah, this conversation I do find really interesting because I think it touches on the surface of how the average person watches football and watches a game. And it is why, 'cause I do agree, you can't just compare stats. You can't just look at numbers. That was very clear to me 'cause for me, it really wasn't until 2023 that I started to actually really look at stats more deeply. Because I was never really stat-driven. I just really wasn't. But then when I started making videos, I had realized, you know what? You really have to just be more comfortable looking at stats. It's how you present arguments and you're pretty good with number, you understand how to do this and hopefully you can speak it in a way that other people will understand it. Because one of my favorite things that I always watch is people who want to use stats, they want to prove to you how smart they are. And they want to show you how smart they are. So, they use a lot of these stats and a lot of these terms. And it's like, that's not what you do. You see this in just sports media in general. A lot of people use really big words and they want to 'cause they want to show you how smart they are. They want to use real technical football terms or just big vocab words and it's like, I get it. You're smart. You know everything. And it's like, no, no, no. The way how you actually really communicate with people is simplify things. Keep it as simple and as straightforward as possible. And that's always been what I like to do because I want to be able to have the conversation with anyone who's capable of doing it. And so, but it's not, you can't just look at the numbers. And you can't just look at the eye test. And you can't just look at accomplishments. And you can't just look at single spectacular plays. And you can't just say horsepower this and horsepower that or mobile athletic. It's a whole collection of things when it's all said and done. It's a whole collection of things. To me, both quarterbacks have to work on operation and execution more than the spectacular. That's what makes both these quarterbacks so fascinating. They have to be better at the execution and the application of the coach's vision. That's what both quarterbacks have to do better and improve in. Now, I think Caleb had a much more straightforward and a simple clarified version of that, whereas Bo Nix and the Broncos simply did not. That's why I'm really excited to see new coach, new ear, new voice in his ear, all of that. Really excited to see what that looks like. Caleb now has year 2, continuity. That's going to be really interesting. So, it's like that to me. And that's what really always impressed me from Jade, Jaden Daniels. His rookie year, it wasn't all his other spectacular plays and his horsepower and all the things that really excite people from an eye test perspective. It was actually really his ability to operate. And they made fun of him and said, "Oh, well, you're just operating a college offense or whatever, right?" Like that was the big thing. They just made fun of him and said, "Oh, you're just operating a college offense." And it's like he operated it incredibly well. And to me, that's what impressed me because that's what takes time. That's actually what takes time. It's why when you see a rookie or a second-year quarterback or whatever it may be, it's the operation that's lacking. And usually we see the spectacular plays. That's why we always say, "Oh, we've seen glimpses of why he was drafted first overall." Well, we see now why he was a top draft pick. They're not talking about operation. They're not talking about changing up the plays at the line of scrimmage and adjusting protections and pre-snap reads. They're talking about that quarterback's ability to scramble and jump around and throw the ball 50 yards down the field. That's what they mean. That's not what they should mean, but that's what they 99% of the time mean. So, yeah, the story is not fully written in a way that people want to make you believe that it is. Okay. It's just not. It's just not. So, hopefully that made sense. I definitely obviously took it in a completely different way than what we normally have because I feel like we had a pretty straightforward conversation about it in my last Bo vs. Caleb video, and so I wanted to do it in a somewhat different way, and I wanted to speak on a way in which I think, how it's just hitting people, right? Like how people, are part of this conversation, right? So, just the way I look at it right now. So, hopefully it all made sense. So, let me know if it did make sense. SE in the comments below. I read every single comment, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be a part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up as it really does help visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.